Hello friends, my name is Vishruta Vinna and I come from civil service background. Prior to my civil service stint, I had also worked as an assistant professor at a university. I have long been associated with IAS mentoring and coaching programs. In fact, for over 2 decades now. And presently, I'm working as a faculty with Unacademy, the most happening place in India in the field of online quality education. And today, I am going to talk to you about some basic concepts of Indian polity and governance. And I will also discuss the nature and differences between the written and the unwritten constitutions of the world. Since shortly I'm going to undertake a plus course on Indian polity and governance on Unacademy platform. So those of you who are interested to follow me up can join the course. Now, to begin with, the first thing we are going to discuss today, the basic concepts of polity and governance, and then the functions and objectives of the Constitution. So, in this video, I first of all welcome you all in this video talk on polity and governance. And in this video, I'm going to cover basically these 4 subjects. The first one, the basic concepts of polity and governance, as I said. Then the functions and objectives of our Constitution. Then the difference between the written and the unwritten constitutions. And finally, we'll talk about a few sample questions for the forthcoming civil service prelims examination. You should understand that with the passing of time, UPSC's pattern of questions is also continuously changing. And nowadays, UPSC is rather focused more on innovative kind of questions. So in order to answer these innovative questions, we have to have a very comprehensive knowledge about various topics which we study. Particularly in polity and governance, there are so many nuances involved in understanding different topics of the subject. So let us begin with, first of all, polity and governance concept. What is polity? What is governance? And also, what is the interrelationship between polity and governance? That is more important. That what is the interrelationship between polity and governance? Because the kind of system we have, this system works. System works based on both these things put together. System works based on both of them. We have to have a polity, and in order to find good results, we have to govern our constitutional given structure. We have to govern the political structure in such a way that we are able to achieve the goals and objectives laid down in our Constitution. So we have to understand not only polity and governance individually, but we have to more importantly understand the correlationship between polity and governance. So first thing, students, the very thing, polity, by definition, in Hindi it is known as Raj Vyavastha, and by definition it is simply a form of government. So polity is nothing but simply a form of government. हमारी जो गवर्नमेंट है, इंडिया की गवर्नमेंट, that is which is based on our constitution. We have the nature of our polity we have is federal polity with unitary bias. हमारी एक संघात्मक व्यवस्था है और उसमें एकात्मक रुझान है. जैसा कि आप जानते हैं कि इमरजेंसी के टाइम में हमारी व्यवस्था संघात्मक तो है, पर इमरजेंसी के टाइम में एकात्मक हो जाती है. So that is the nature of our polity, the form of government. Polity is also defined as a political organization or a specific form of political organization or an identifiable political entity. Any identifiable political entity or any specific political organization or political organization with a group of people, or with a group of people organized by some institutionalized relations with a capacity to mobilize resources. रिसोर्स मोबिलाइजेशन का कैपेसिटी हो, इंस्टीट्यूशनलाइज रिलेशनशिप उनमें हो, इस तरह की कोई भी ऑर्गेनाइज्ड पॉलिटिकल एंटिटी को ही पॉलिटी कहते हैं। अब पॉलिटी के कई सारे एग्जाम्पल्स हैं, जैसे एक गवर्नमेंट एक पॉलिटी है, एक सॉवरेन स्टेट और एक स्टेट वो भी एक पॉलिटी है। अभी हम देखेंगे। सो इट इज नेसेसरली, इट रेफर्स टू अ फॉर्म ऑफ पॉलिटिकल ऑर्गेनाइजेशन, a form of political organization of a nation or any political entity based on institutionalized relationships, right? A polity is also any collectivity. Collectivity means a group of people which are organized for governance. जैसे कोई corporate board है, governance board है, एक government of a country है, या एक state है, right? They are all examples of a polity. Sometimes it is also defined as a form of constitution. जैसा कि हमारी पॉलिटी का नेचर है फेडरल पॉलिटी विद यूनिटरी बायस, तो कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन प्रोवाइड्स फॉर फेडरल पॉलिटी विद यूनिटरी बायस. At the same time, now we have to understand what is governance. Governance, students, is basically, it refers to processes of overseeing. It refers to the processes of overseeing, monitoring, controlling, and giving directions to a nation or a constitutional structure or a constitutional organization or an organization based on the tenets enshrined in its constitution. So basically governance का जो मतलब है वो है कि जो कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन ने गवर्नमेंट का स्ट्रक्चर क्रिएट किया है उसको शासित करना, उसको उसका जो शासन है वो गवर्नेंस है, कि उस स्ट्रक्चर से हम जो एम्स एंड ऑब्जेक्टिव्स कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन में लेट डाउन हैं उनको किस प्रकार से उन उद्देश्यों को प्राप्त करें, उसके लिए हमें गवर्नेंस करना ज़रूरी है, शासन करना ज़रूरी है. शासन यदि अच्छा है तो सुशासन होगा, और शासन अच्छा नहीं है, इफ इट इज़ बैड गवर्नेंस, कुशासन होगा. सो सुशासन एंड कुशासन, दैट मीन्स गुड गवर्नेंस एंड बैड गवर्नेंस, दैट विल डिटरमिन इन टर्न व्हाट काइंड ऑफ रिजल्ट्स और कॉन्सिक्वेंसेस वी कैन हैव in a particular political system. At the same time, so good governance, as I said, that leads the nation in a right direction. Leads the nation in a right direction. Right direction. It will lead the nation in a right direction of growth and prosperity. And bad governance, if we have bad governance takes it to a wrong direction with negative consequences. So all governments will emphasize on giving a right direction to the nation. In fact, we are a democratic state. We are a parliamentary form of government. We have a parliamentary form of government. So our governments always strive to provide good governance to the system so that the aims and objectives laid down in our constitution are achieved, so that the visualization of a welfare state as enshrined in the Indian Constitution is achieved. So basically, that is the meaning of governance. So at the same time, now governance has got a practical implication that the demands and challenges of a polity are responded by good or bad governing processes. So good or bad governing processes will respond to the demands and challenges of a polity, giving a political entity or a nation either its healthy or unhealthy consequences or favorable or unfavorable consequences. As just now we have understood कि यदि good governance है तो it will create and produce favorable consequences. Bad governance है, it will produce unfavorable consequences for the people in general and for the nation in particular. So it is very necessary that polity goes hand in hand with good governance so as to achieve the aims and objectives which have been laid down in our constitution. But whatever may be the kind of polity of a nation, ultimately it is the good governance that holds the key to the achievement of its enshrined goals. जैसा मैंने बताया कि good governance जो है, सुशासन जो है, गवर्नमेंट जितना सुशासन करती है, keeping welfare of the people in mind, welfare state concept which is enshrined in directive principles of the state policy, उतने ही अचीवमेंट्स हमारे बेटर होंगे. नाउ कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन और गवर्नेंस का क्या कोरिलेशनशिप है, उसको अंडरस्टैंड करने के लिए ये देखते हैं कि वी कैन ऑल्सो से दैट इन रिलेशन टू अ कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन, that in political terms a constitution comprises the basic principles of a political system. हमारा जो political system है उसके जो मूलभूत सिद्धांत है वो हमारे संविधान में अंतर्निहित है, under which the people of a state are to be governed. और उन सिद्धांतों के अंतर्गत ही भारत की सरकार अपना शासन चलाती है. So that means there is now here very clearly the relationship between constitution, governance and political structure has come about. So we can understand that they are all interrelated. और इन सबका जो eventual aim है, जो इसका ultimate goal है, वो क्या है? वो ये है कि the tenets and principles laid down in the constitution for the welfare state, for the prosperity of people, for justice of every sort, like political justice, economic justice, social justice, is achieved. So basically, these three things are so closely interrelated with each other that we have to make a fine balance between the three, so that, I mean, the governance, constitution, and the political system, so that the aims and objectives enshrined in our constitution are achieved. Now, another important thing to understand that constitution determines the matters of power, composition, procedures and interrelationship. अब ये एक important चीज़ है कि constitution जो है, it details out and it lays down that what will be the distribution of power amongst different organs of the government, what would be the composition of government and composition of various constitutional and constitutional bodies and other things. And it would also lay down what procedures we would follow for legislation and what procedures would be followed as regards settlement of disputes and all that, and what would be the interrelationships between different organs of our government or political system, like executive, judiciary and legislature, the distribution of powers among them, the extent of their powers, citizens' rights, very, very important thing. Constitution will also determine citizens' rights structures, like we have the fundamental rights in Part 3 of the Constitution, right? The structure of various bodies and other matters concerned with the governance of a country. That means it will comprehensively cover all the aspects of polity, so that there is a direction available with the government for good governance of the system. Now, what are the objectives and functions of our Constitution? So first of all, I will take a basic objectives of our Constitution. Actually, basic objectives are laid down in the preamble of the Constitution itself. The basic objectives I'm talking about of the Constitution, and we understand the basic objectives of our Constitution are stated by the preamble. They are to secure to all the citizens of the country justice, social, economic and political justice, liberty of thought, expression, belief, faith and worship, equality of status and of opportunity, and promotion of fraternity amongst all the citizens, so as to assure the dignity of the individual and unity and integrity of the nation. That means that these are the four fundamental and the basic objectives of Indian polity. These are the four basic objectives of Indian Constitution. These are the four basic objectives for which the government should govern the country and achieve these lofty ideals which are laid down in the Constitution. And that doesn't mean that these are the only objectives, right? Now, here itself it is mentioned that dignity of the individual. Fraternity must be promoted to assure dignity of the individual. So eventually we have to achieve dignity of the individual as well. We have to achieve and maintain unity and integrity of the nation. मतलब ऐसा नहीं होना चाहिए कि फ्रैटर्निटी के अभाव में हमारे राष्ट्र की जो एकता और अखंडता है वो अक्षुण्ण न रहे, मतलब वो सदैव अक्षुण्ण रहनी चाहिए. इट शुड ऑलवेज बी मेंटेन. द यूनिटी एंड इंटेग्रिटी ऑफ द नेशन शुड ऑलवेज बी केप्ट इंटैक्ट. और इसके साथ साथ डिग्निटी ऑफ द इंडिविजुअल शुड बी अश्योर्ड. So that is about the basic objectives of the Constitution. Students now understand what are the various functions of Constitution. I have drawn this diagram for you. These are the 11 basic functions of the Constitution. Let us first of all begin by saying that Constitution enables the government to fulfill aspirations of the people. ये एक बहुत फंडामेंटल फंक्शन है कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन का. कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन में जो अंतर्निहित भावनाएं हैं, जो सिद्धांत हैं, उन सिद्धांतों और भावनाओं के आधार पर गवर्नमेंट काम करती है और वो कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन की जो दिशा निर्देश हैं उनके दिशा निर्देशों पर सरकार को चलाकर जो सिटीजन्स हैं उनकी होप्स एंड एस्पिरेशंस को पूरा करने के लिए काम करती है. फंडामेंटल एंड बेसिक लॉ ऑफ द लैंड होता है. कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन का एक बेसिक फंक्शन है, इट सर्व्स एज अ फंडामेंटल लॉ ऑफ द लैंड, बेसिक लॉ ऑफ द लैंड. इट इज कॉन्स्टिट्यूएंट लॉ ऑफ द लैंड, राइट. बहुत ही बेसिक और फाउंडेशनल लॉ ऑफ द लैंड है. कोई भी चीज़, किसी भी चीज़ को हमें इंटरप्रेट करना है तो सुप्रीम कोर्ट एंड हाई कोर्ट, they will go to the Constitution and look into the Constitution, what the Constitution says, what was the intention of our founding fathers as regards that particular matter, and based on that, judiciary will decide and give directions that what is exactly the implication of something and how it should be implemented. So basically, fundamental in the basic law of the land is one of the major functions of the Constitution. Then it creates the necessary political structure to run the country. As we have already seen, Constitution creates what would be the kind of judiciary, what would be the kind of legislature, what would be the kind of executive, what would be their interrelationship, and all the other aspects that need to be there for the entire governance. They are laid down in the Constitution. Then ensures smooth governance of the nation. गवर्नेंस भी कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन के आधार पर ही होगी. तो एक फंक्शन हुआ कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन का, दैट इट विल एंश्योर स्मूथ गवर्नेंस. जितना कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन बेटर तरीके से लिखा गया है उसमें गवर्नेंस करने में उतना ही कम जो है डाउट्स रहेंगे. तो इट पेव्स अ वे फॉर गुड गवर्नेंस. इट एंश्योर्स स्मूथ गवर्नेंस. Divides the powers among different organs of the government that we have just now already seen. It also enables the government to deal with an extraordinary situation. यदि कोई extraordinary situation arise हो जाए तो उससे deal with करने के लिए our constitution has provided for emergencies. There are 3 types of emergencies provided for in the constitution. As we know that national emergency under Article 352, then state emergency or President's rule under Article 356 and 365, and financial emergency under Article 360. So, how to deal with an emergency that is catered for in our Constitution? समझने की बात यह है कि जब emergency होती है तो हमारा संविधान जो संघीय या संघात्मक है वो एकात्मक हो जाता है. And central government comes to acquire enormous powers during that time. It declares to the world the nature of our polity. कि हमारी पॉलिटी का नेचर क्या है. इट इज काइंड ऑफ डिक्लेरेशन, प्रोक्लेमेशन टू द होल वर्ल्ड दैट लुक, दिस इज व्हाट द नेचर ऑफ आवर पॉलिटीज. वी आर अ पार्लियामेंट्री फॉर्म ऑफ गवर्नमेंट. वी बिलीव इन रूल ऑफ लॉ एंड वी आर अ फेडरल स्ट्रक्चर. नाउ इट लेज डाउन द बेसिक प्रिंसिपल्स फॉर एन आइडियल नेशनल लाइफ. आइडियल नेशनल लाइफ कैसा होना चाहिए, तो उसके लिए जो बेसिक प्रिंसिपल्स हैं वो भी, फॉर एग्जाम्पल इन फंडामेंटल ड्यूटीज, सिटीजन्स हैव बीन citizens are supposed to follow these fundamental duties and they are laid down. So it would lead to an ideal life, ideal national life for a citizen. So the constitution is one of the functions is that lays down basic principles for an ideal national life, provides guiding principles for India's interaction with the world. Now, how should we interact with the world? We believe in world peace, international peace. We believe in the settlement of world disputes through arbitration and mutual understanding. For example, under Article 51, what kind of basic foreign policy we should have, what kind of relations we should have. We believe in peace and coexistence. So that is laid down in the Constitution. It is one of the functions of the Constitution. It proclaims to the world that how do we intend to deal with the rest of the nations of the world. It imposes restraints on the government for what it cannot do. Now this is very important. Government doesn't have unbridled powers. The fundamental rights of the people cannot be trampled upon just like that. Of course, Government, under certain situations, can restrict fundamental rights of the people, but it cannot do away with the basic structure of the Constitution, as was pronounced by our Supreme Court in Keshwanand Bharti case, the basic structure of the Constitution. I will separately deal in details with what does it mean to have a basic structure and what is our basic structure as enunciated in the Constitution and as derived from the Constitution by Honorable Supreme Court. And at the same time, it provides a pathway to citizens for their growth, because good governance eventually means that people would enjoy liberty, equality, justice, and all that. So that means that it would provide for them a pathway for growth of their individual personality, their growth in terms of their collective life. So Constitution has got multifarious functions. Now I have enlisted these functions here, the same functions I have enlisted for you. Fundamental and basic law of the land, declares to the world the nature of our polity, divides the powers among different organs of the government, ensures governance of the nation, creates the necessary political structure to run the country, and provides a pathway to citizens for the growth and development by fostering a system based on justice. See, it fosters a system which is primarily based on justice, equality before law, and non-discrimination. The justice, Constitution's preamble further elaborates on justice and says that social, economic, and political justice. Now, it is a great idea, and it is our Constitution, therefore, is one of the best constitutions in the world because it's based on such a great ideal of social justice, economic justice, political justice for all the citizens of the country. At the same time, it enunciates equality before law. We know under Article 14 that there is equality before law and equal protection of the law, which is extended to all citizens of the nation. And there is no discrimination. Article 50 talks about non-discrimination. So there is a system, a political system, and a constitutional structure which provides a pathway to citizens for the growth and development, fostering these tenets enshrined in the Constitution, particularly justice, equality, and non-discrimination. Then it enables the government to fulfill aspirations of the people and helps create a just and fair society, a society which is based on justice and fairness. That means that किसी के साथ अन्याय नहीं होना चाहिए और किसी के साथ भेदभाव नहीं होना चाहिए. तो ये जो महान आदर्श हैं, इन पर हमारा संविधान आधारित है. It also imposes restraints on the government for what it cannot do. Government is, as I said, it cannot become autocratic because Constitution has put several restrictions on the government. Government cannot do anything it desires. Government will have to do only those things which are laid down in the Constitution within the limits permissible by the Constitution, because there is supremacy of the Constitution. So people enjoy so many rights under our Constitution, and they have right to life and personal liberty, for example, under Article 21. And there are fundamental rights which are enjoyed by the people and which are protected by the Supreme Court, which are protected by the Constitution, and which are guaranteed, so to say, by the Constitution under the aegis of the Supreme Court. So to say that restraints are there on the government, and government constantly, of course, strives for the welfare of the people, and we want to eventually achieve a society where there is justice, equality, and non-discrimination. Provides guiding principles for India's interaction with the rest of the world. As I have already explained, it lays down basic principles for an ideal national life and enables the government to deal with an extraordinary situation. Now, students, let us understand what are the differences between written and the unwritten constitutions. Sometimes, rather at times, there is a lot of confusion among students regarding the difference between written and the unwritten constitution. Now, first of all, to understand that modern written constitutions, you see, most of the constitutions in the world are basically written constitutions. A few constitutions are unwritten or uncodified as well. Modern written constitutions owe their origin to the charters of liberty granted by kings in Middle Ages, right? But the first written constitution was framed by the Representative Constituent Assembly of United States of America, and this constitution came into force on 4th of March 1789. That is, towards the end of 18th century, it came into existence, and it was enforced on 4th of March 1789. This example, we know, was followed by France. Then, but the earliest written constitution that way in modern times is that of the United States of America. This example was followed by France in 1791. It gave its first constitution. Subsequently, France has had many other constitutions. During the 19th century and later, a number of states framed their constitutions, most of which were written, with certain exceptions like the Constitution of England is an unwritten constitution, as we know. But that doesn't mean that England is the only country having uncodified and unwritten constitution. Other countries also, some of the other countries also, like Israel, New Zealand, and to a certain extent Canada, they have uncodified constitutions or unwritten constitutions. Now, what are the features of a written constitution? A written constitution basically is a legal document, duly enacted. It's a legal document, duly enacted. क्योंकि किसी भी चीज़ का इंटरप्रिटेशन वो कॉन्स्टिट्यूएंट लॉ के बेसिस पे होता है. इट्स ए ड्यूली इनेक्टेड. हमारे कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन के प्रीएम्बल में भी स्पष्ट रूप से लिखा है, वी द पीपल ऑफ इंडिया डू हियर बाई अडॉप्ट, इनेक्ट एंड गिव टू आवरसेल्व्स दिस कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन. सो इट्स ए ड्यूली इनेक्टेड कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन. इन द फॉर्म ऑफ लॉज इट इज प्रेसाइज. रिटन कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन होगा, प्रेसाइज होगा, डेफिनेट होगा, सिस्टमेटिक होगा, and it is the result of conscious and deliberate efforts of the people. एक कॉन्स्टिट्यूएंट असेंबली है, उसने कॉन्शियस एंड डेलिबरेट एफर्ट्स करके, जैसे हमारा संविधान है वो 2 वर्ष 11 महीने और 18 दिन में पूरा हुआ, दैट मीन्स 2 years 11 months 18 days. तो इतना एफर्ट उसमें हमारे कॉन्स्टिट्यूशनल फाउंडिंग फादर्स ने किया. तो इट इज़ प्रेसाइज, डेफिनेट, सिस्टमेटिक एंड द रिजल्ट ऑफ कॉन्शियस एंड डेलिबरेट एफर्ट्स. It is framed by a representative body, जैसे Constituent Assembly, which was set up under Cabinet Mission Plan. So it was framed by a representative body, duly elected by the people at a particular period in history, right? This simply means that Constitution का जो निर्माण है वो किसी representative body से हुआ है. It is always promulgated on a specific date in history. This is very important. Written constitutions, once they are ready, then they will be promulgated from a specific date. Like our constitution was adopted on 26th of November 1949, but enforced on 26th of January 1950. तो जो date of promulgation and date of enforcement of the constitution है वो 26th of January 1950. So the Constitution of India is the best example. I am saying this is best example. It's the most elaborate constitution, lengthiest constitution, very detailed constitution. So written constitutions में उस perspective से देखें तो definitely this is the best example of written constitutions. Now written constitution is generally rigid. Rigid इसलिए कि इसका यदि amendment करना है तो कुछ amendments ऐसे हैं जिनको करने के लिए 50% स्टेट लेजिस्लेचर्स की अनुमति भी होती है इंडियन कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन में. तो रिटन कॉन्स्टिट्यूशंस आर जनरली रिजिड बिकॉज उसको अमेंडमेंट करना पड़ेगा, एंड अमेंडमेंट विल रिक्वायर अ प्रोसीजर. लाइक इन आवर कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन आर्टिकल 368, the procedure for amending the constitution is laid down in details. So written constitution is generally rigid and its amendments need constitutional law. जैसे कि हम देखते हैं अमेंडमेंट है तो कॉन्स्टिट्यूशनल लॉ की आवश्यकता पड़ेगी, वो अमेंडमेंट है वो कॉन्स्टिट्यूशनल लॉ. इन अदर वर्ड्स a distinction between constitutional law and ordinary law is maintained. कॉन्स्टिट्यूशनल लॉ और ऑर्डिनरी लॉ में एक डिस्टिंक्शन मेंटेन किया होता है, अपने आप ही हो जाएगा, क्योंकि अमेंडमेंट होगा तो कॉन्स्टिट्यूएंट जो लॉ बनेगा, वो जो अमेंडमेंट है वो कॉन्स्टिट्यूएंट लॉ है और उसके आधार पे ऑर्डिनरी लॉ बनेगा. दैट मीन्स जो कॉन्स्टिट्यूएंट लॉ है इट हैज सम डिग्री ऑफ सुपीरियरिटी बिकॉज बेस्ड ऑन दैट ओनली ऑर्डिनरी लॉ और स्टैट्यूट वुड बी फाइनली मेड. सो द first is regarded, as I said, this first is regarded, first means the constituent law is regarded as superior to the second. Constituent law or constitutional law is regarded as superior to the ordinary law. फिर written constitution may also be termed as an enacted constitution. वो तो हमने देखी नहीं. The evolution of Indian constitution started during the British rule itself. We have a long constitutional history. वो एक separate class में, when you join my plus course, then we will have a detailed discussion on the historical background of Indian constitution. It started during the British rule, and Indian constitution was framed by Constituent Assembly with a group of members who pursued to improve the existing conditions. Basically, their aim was to create a constitution which would create an ideal society and maintain good relations with other countries. Now, an unwritten constitution, on the other hand, consists of principles of the government that have never been enacted in the form of law. ये convention based constitution होता है. Unwritten constitution is basically convention based. कन्वेंशन बेस्ड कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन होता है. जो कन्वेंशंस ओवर द सेंचुरीज डेवलप हो जाते हैं, उनके आधार पर संविधान, वो उसका विकास, क्रमिक विकास होता है. जैसे ब्रिटिश कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन को दें तो जब से मैग्ना कार्टा बना तभी से उसका फाउंडेशन बन गया, और धीमे धीमे जैसे जैसे कन्वेंशंस डेवलप होते गए वैसे वैसे संविधान का विकास होता जाता है. तो बेसिकली नॉट इनेक्टेड बट इट इज़ इवॉल्व्ड कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन. दूसरी चीज़ है कि अनसिस्टमेटिक होता है, बिकॉज देयर इज नो कोडिफिकेशन पर से. कोई एक डॉक्यूमेंट नहीं है जिसको ये कहा जा सके संविधान है. अनकोडिफाइड है, अनरिटन है, इनडेफिनेट है, क्योंकि आप डिफरेंट कन्वेंशन से दे आर सब्जेक्ट टू डिफरेंट इंटरप्रिटेशंस इन वन वे. एंड अनप्रिसाइज होता है क्योंकि देयर इज नो प्रॉपर कोडिफिकेशन ऑफ द कॉन्स्टिट्यूशनल लॉ एंड कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन पर से. Such a constitution is not the result of conscious effort. इसके लिए वो conscious और deliberate effort को Constituent Assembly तो ब्रिटेन में नहीं बैठा था जिसने कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन का निर्माण किया. वो तो एक कन्वेंशन बेस्ड कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन है, अनरिटन एंड अनकोडिफाइड कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन. और इट इज नॉट मेड बाय अ रिप्रेजेंटेटिव कॉन्स्टिट्यूएंट असेंबली, सो इट इज समटाइम्स कॉल्ड इवॉल्व्ड कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन और क्यूमुलेटिव कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन. जैसा कि मैंने बताया कि कन्वेंशंस ग्रेजुअली इवॉल्व होते रहते हैं, नई नई चीज़ें उसमें जजमेंट्स हैं, स्टेट्यूट्स हैं, वो ऐड होते रहते हैं, राइट, जो कन्वेंशंस हैं, और उनके आधार पर संविधान जो है वो क्रमिक रूप से विकसित होता है और जो है वो संग्रहित संविधान हो जाता है, कि जो कन्वेंशंस का संग्रह है उस संविधान का प्रारूप बन जाता है. एंड इट डज नॉट हैव ए स्पेसिफिक डेट, क्योंकि अब वो तो एक इवॉल्व्ड कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन है, तो स्पेसिफिक डेट नहीं हुआ. इट इज इवॉल्व्ड इन कोर्स ऑफ टाइम, एंड द कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन ऑफ इंग्लैंड इज द बेस्ट एग्जाम्पल ऑफ एन अनरिटन और अनकोडिफाइड कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन. देन एन अनकोडिफाइड कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन, अब ये एक अंडरस्टैंड करने की चीज़ है. और अनरिटन कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन हैज़ द एडवांटेजेस ऑफ इलास्टिसिटी, अडेप्टिबिलिटी एंड रेजिलियंस, क्योंकि उसके लिए कोई अलग से अमेंडमेंट तो करना नहीं होता है. उसके लिए तो एक फिर नवीन स्टेट्यूट बना के वो इवॉल्व होता रहता है, राइट. तो उसमें बहुत इलास्टिसिटी है. जो कॉन्स्टिट्यूशनल एक्सपर्ट है A.V. Dicey, ब्रिटिश जूरिस्ट एंड कॉन्स्टिट्यूशनल थ्योरिस्ट, he describes the uncodified or unwritten constitution as the most flexible polity in existence. मतलब उसमें काफ़ी फ्लेक्सिबिलिटी है. हमारे संविधान में कुछ चीज़ें हैं जो जैसे फेडरल फॉर्म ऑफ गवर्नमेंट से संबंधित जो चीज़ें हैं उनमें यदि चेंजेस करने हैं तो कुछ स्पेसिफिक चेंजेस, कुछ स्पेसिफिक आर्टिकल्स में चेंजेस करने हैं, तो उसके लिए 50% स्टेट लेजिस्लेचर्स की भी सहमति चाहिए, राइट. दैट मीन्स इट इज़ नॉट एन ईजी प्रोसेस. इवन अमेरिकन कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन का एग्जाम्पल लें तो इट इज़ स्टिल मोर डिफिकल्ट, क्योंकि वहाँ तो कॉन्स्टिट्यूशनल कन्वेंशन का गठन करना होता है. तो दीज रिटन कॉन्स्टिट्यूशंस हैव ट्रिमेंडस रिजिडिटी एट टाइम्स. ऑफ कोर्स सर्टेन पार्ट्स ऑफ द रिटन कॉन्स्टिट्यूशंस आर वेरी ईजी टू चेंज, जस्ट बाय वर्किंग सिंपल मेजॉरिटी दे कैन बी चेंज. लेकिन अनरिटन कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन में ये खास बात होती है, दे हैव ट्रिमेंडस फ्लेक्सिबिलिटी, इलास्टिसिटी, राइट. सो अ सिग्निफिकेंट डिसएडवांटेज हाउएवर is that controversies may arise due to difference in understanding of the usages and customs that form a fundamental provision of the constitution. जैसा कि मैंने बताया, कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन के फंडामेंटल प्रोविजंस जो हैं वो बेसिकली कन्वेंशन और यूजेजेस बेस्ड होते हैं. तो उसका जो इंटरप्रिटेशन है, इट इज सब्जेक्ट टू इंटरप्रिटेशन, इट इज नॉट सब्जेक्ट टू द रिटन डाउन वर्ड. वो कन्वेंशन है, तो उसमें एट टाइम्स देयर मे बी मोर डिफरेंसेस ऑफ ओपिनियन एंड मोर वैगनेस. It doesn't mean that written constitutions are completely free of vagueness. वहाँ भी vagueness होती है, लेकिन they are having minimum vagueness because everything is written down. Then unwritten constitution therefore is not rigid, जैसा हमने understand किया, and its amendments do not need any constituent or amending law. In other words, a distinction between constitutional law and ordinary law is not maintained. तो यदि distinction constituent law और ordinary law में नहीं है, that means it indicates an unwritten constitution. It indicates a flexibility, a feature of flexibility, which is in that sense a very positive feature of the unqualified constitutions. Unwritten constitutions may also be termed as an unenacted, that we have already seen. The foundation of English constitution was laid in 13th century itself by King John. Not that he wanted to lay the foundation. Actually, there was a conflict between the barons and the king. And after the barons, they jointly put a resistance to the arbitrariness of the king. Finally, this Magna Carta was signed in 1215. So, King John issued the first charter of British freedom, known as Magna Carta of 1215. Since then, it has been evolving, right? तो मैग्ना कार्टा में क्या है, ये भी थोड़ा सा समझना चाहिए कि मैग्ना कार्टा बेसिकली इज लिबर्टेटम. मैग्ना कार्टा लिबर्टेटम, कॉमनली कॉल्ड मैग्ना कार्टा, राइट. मैग्ना चार्टा भी कहते हैं और ग्रेट चार्टर भी कहते हैं इसे. इज अ रॉयल चार्टर, क्योंकि किंग ने इशू किया था, किंग जॉन, ऑफ राइट्स एग्रीड टू बाय किंग जॉन ऑफ इंग्लैंड ऑन 15th of June 2015. मैग्ना कार्टा डेमोक्रेटिक हिस्ट्री में इसलिए इंपॉर्टेंट है क्योंकि इट गेव दोज बैरन्स सर्टेन राइट्स. क्या राइट्स दिए वो भी देखते हैं. इट प्रॉमिस्ड द प्रोटेक्शन ऑफ चर्च राइट्स, फॉर एग्जाम्पल, राइट. प्रोटेक्शन ऑफ चर्च राइट्स वुड बी प्रोटेक्टेड. प्रोटेक्शन फॉर द बैरन्स फ्रॉम इलीगल इम्प्रिजनमेंट नहीं होगा. एक्सेस टू स्विफ्ट जस्टिस स्विफ्ट होगा, तीव्रता होगी उसमें. एंड लिमिटेशंस ऑन फ्यूडल पेमेंट्स, आर्बिट्रेरी फ्यूडल पेमेंट्स की डिमांड नहीं की जाएगी टू द क्राउन, to be implemented through a council of 25 members. एक council का गठन भी हुआ 25 members की. That means Magna Carta is therefore a climacteric. It's a great turning point in that sense because it put several restrictions on the arbitrariness of the king and it gave several rights to the barons. Now, what kind of innovative questions, finally students, I'm going to take up now some of the questions, symptomatic questions for you for the forthcoming civil service examination. यूपीएससी जो आजकल क्वेश्चंस पूछ रही है उनका पैटर्न इस तरह का है कि यू हैव टू कम्प्रिहेंसिवली अंडरस्टैंड द कॉन्सेप्ट्स. जब तक आप कॉन्सेप्ट्स को कम्प्रिहेंसिवली अंडरस्टैंड नहीं करते, इट विल बी वेरी डिफिकल्ट फॉर यू टू आंसर दीज क्वेश्चंस करेक्टली. तो अभी उसमें कुछ क्वेश्चंस मैंने आपके लिए आज दिए हैं. लाइक द फर्स्ट क्वेश्चन, विच ऑफ द फॉलोइंग इज नॉट अ फंक्शनल फीचर ऑफ द इंडियन कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन. जैसे हमने इंडियन कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन के वेरियस फंक्शंस भी थॉरोली अंडरस्टूड. नाउ, it is the basic law of the land. Yes, it is. It provides a frame of reference for the solution of any conflict between different organs of the government. Yes. It protects citizens against executive tyranny. Yes. Executive tyranny यदि है, यदि निरंकुशता है, तो उसमें रेस्ट्रेंट संविधान लगाता है. संविधान कहता है कि जो बेसिक स्ट्रक्चर है, जो बेसिक टेनिट्स है, कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन के बेसिक ऑब्जेक्टिव्स हैं, दे कैनॉट बी ट्रैम्पल्ड अपॉन और वायलेटेड. It guarantees that there is no external aggression. अब कोई भी संविधान क्या ये गारंटी दे सकता है कि बाहर की शक्तियाँ युद्ध नहीं करेगी, भारत पर आक्रमण नहीं करेगी, there will be no external aggression or no armed rebellion? इस बात की गारंटी तो कोई संविधान नहीं दे सकता. Therefore, this is not a functional feature of Indian Constitution. So the correct option to this question is 4. Then question number 2. Which of the following does not support the notion that a written constitution as the one we have in India is better than an unwritten constitution? अब ये समझने की बात है कि ये कोई आवश्यक नहीं है कि रिटन कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन हमेशा अनरिटन कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन से बेटर होगा. कुछ आर्ग्यूमेंट्स हैं विच गो इन फेवर ऑफ रिटन कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन, बट कुछ आर्ग्यूमेंट्स हैं विच गो इन फेवर ऑफ अनरिटन कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन एज वेल. लेकिन क्वेश्चन क्या कह रहा है? क्वेश्चन ये कह रहा है कि which of these statements does not support the notion, the idea that a written constitution is better than an unwritten constitution. मतलब 3 तो सपोर्ट करते हैं इसको, एक सपोर्ट नहीं करता. तो इट इज मोर इजीली अंडरस्टैंडेबल बाय द कॉमन मैन. ये तो सच बात है. यदि रिटन कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन है तो कॉमन मैन कैन इजीली अंडरस्टैंड व्हाट कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन डू वी हैव, राइट? एंड ही डजंट नीड एक्स्ट्रा ऑर्डिनरी पॉलिटिकल acumen to understand that. है ना, इजीली अंडरस्टैंड किया जा सकता है। तो ये एक बहुत ग्रेट फीचर है रिटन कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन का. इट इज प्रेसाइज, डेफिनेट एंड सिस्टमेटिक बिकॉज एवरीथिंग इज written down. So it has that property. It maintains a distinction between the constituent law or constitutional law and ordinary law. अब ये समझने की बात है. Constituent law and ordinary law का distinction है. इसका मतलब है कि there is rigidity in constitution which would require amendment in the constitution which is a constituent law. And then based on this law, constituent law or constitutional law, ordinary law would be made. Therefore, if this kind of distinction is maintained, it is indicative of rigidity. It is indicative of rigidity. And that means rigidity of constitution cannot be said to be a good feature. More is the flexibility, then with the changing situations, changing needs, we can amend the constitution easily. So it cannot be in one way, rather it is not a positive thing. And therefore not a thing which is as well. On the other hand, unwritten constitutions, they have a lot of flexibility and elasticity as we have seen just now. So it is promulgated from a specific date. वो भी एक पॉजिटिव फीचर है क्योंकि उस डेट के पहले जो कानून थे यदि उनका कोई वर्तमान कॉन्टेक्स्ट में रेलेवेंस नहीं है, कोरिलेशन नहीं है, उनकी आवश्यकता नहीं है, वो सार्थक नहीं है और उन कानूनों का अब कुछ भी लेना देना नहीं है, तो वो सब समाप्त हो जाएंगे उस डेट से. तो ये एक डेट होने का स्पेसिफिक फायदा है कि कई सारे कानून जब हमारा भारत का संविधान बना तो जो ब्रिटिश सरकार ने बनाए थे तो unless the constitution had provided for their admissibility, they got rescinded. वो समाप्त हो गए. Unless the constitution of India which was adopted provided for their continuance and admissibility. तो ये भी एक पॉजिटिव फीचर है. अब क्वेश्चन नंबर 3 में देखिए, which of the following statements is or are true in relation to a written constitution? It is an evolved constitution or cumulative constitution? No. Written constitution तो वो तो enacted constitution है. It is not an evolved or cumulative constitution. वो तो पहले तैयार होके फिर उसको हम अडॉप्ट करते हैं और फिर उसके बाद में उसमें कॉन्स्टिट्यूशनल सुप्रीमेसी होती है तो सुप्रीम कोर्ट उसको इंटरप्रेट करके और गवर्नमेंट को गाइड करके. तो ये सर्टेनली ये स्टेटमेंट रॉन्ग हो गया. मतलब इट इज़ not a statement which is concerned with the written constitution, it is a statement concerned with the unwritten constitution. इसी प्रकार से दूसरे को देखते हैं. It is not the result of conscious and deliberate efforts. No, written constitutions are always a result of conscious and deliberate efforts. So both the statements are wrong. Now how many, I am dealing with question number 4, how many parts have been added to the constitution after the pronouncement of Minerva Mills case by the Supreme Court in 1980? तो आप समझने की बात है कि कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन जब ओरिजिनली बना था तो इट हैड 22 पार्ट्स. नाउ वी हैव 25 पार्ट्स. दैट मीन्स 3 पार्ट्स इन इफेक्ट हैव बीन एडेड. एक्चुअली 4 पार्ट्स हैव बीन एडेड, 1 पार्ट हैज बीन डिलीटेड. लाइक पार्ट 7 वाज डिलीटेड बाय द 7th कॉन्स्टिट्यूशनल अमेंडमेंट एक्ट इन 1956. So and 3 parts have been added. 3 parts have been added. 4 parts have been added, 1 deleted. So effectively 3 parts have been added now. उस 3 में से अभी आप देखेंगे कि ये जो ओवरऑल 4 पार्ट्स ऐड हुए हैं उसमें से 4A and 14A दे वर एडेड बाय 42nd कॉन्स्टिट्यूशनल अमेंडमेंट एक्ट 1976, राइट. तो वो सर्टेनली दोनों ही 1976 में ऐड हुए. लेकिन पार्ट 9A 9B को यदि देखें तो पार्ट 9A विच इज कंसर्न्ड विद म्यूनिसिपैलिटीज दैट वाज एडेड बाय 74th कॉन्स्टिट्यूशनल अमेंडमेंट एक्ट इन 1992. तो वो उसके बाद ही आया. इसके अलावा जो कोऑपरेटिव सोसाइटीज से संबंधित है 9B, दैट ऑल्सो केम अबाउट थ्रू 97th कॉन्स्टिट्यूशनल अमेंडमेंट एक्ट इन 2011. तो ये 2 पार्ट्स हैं जो बाद में ऐड हुए. द फंडामेंटल ड्यूटीज एज कंटेन्ड इन आर्टिकल 51A पार्ट 4A of the constitution are duties of the Indian citizens. Fundamental duties Indian citizens की duties है. Towards whom are these duties directed? वो संविधान के प्रति है, राष्ट्र के प्रति है, या लोगों के प्रति है, या बच्चों के प्रति है जो 6 to 14 ग्रुप में है, क्योंकि वहाँ एजुकेशनल अपॉर्चुनिटीज़ की भी बात है पेरेंट्स के द्वारा. तो और ऑल द अबव. तो नेचुरली इसका करेक्ट ऑप्शन क्या होगा? ऑल द अबव. How would you classify the Indian Constitution based on its nature of polity? तो बेसिकली इट्स रिटन एंड लेंथी कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन, ये फीचर है इसका. यूनिक कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन, ये भी एक फीचर है. फेडरल कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन विद यूनिटरी बायस, यस, दिस इज द नेचर ऑफ आवर पॉलिटी बेसिकली. It's a federal constitution with unitary bias. It is not a unitary constitution with federal bias. So option 3, like if I give that this option 1, 2, 3 and 4, then option 3 is the correct option here. So thank you very much students for watching this video. My name is Vishruta Vinna, and you can follow me up on my further videos on YouTube, and you can also join my Plus course on Unacademy platform. Thank you so much.